I'm here with Minister Peter Garrett and with Parliamentary Secretary Jacinta Collins. Today I am launching the biggest changes to school education in our nation for 40 years. Today I am announcing a plan. To properly resource teachers, classrooms and kids for generations to come. And these new resources, this new money, comes with new ways of working to ensure that every child in every school reaches their full potential. For me, it was education and getting every child a great education that brought me into politics as a moral cause. That drove me into politics to start with, and it's what drives me today. But as Prime Minister too, I have had many insights into how important education is to the future of our economy. I've been able to travel our region of the world. I am very familiar with how countries in our region and around the world are improving their education systems. Put simply, we cannot have the strong economy that we want tomorrow unless we have the best of education in our schools today. That is why the plan that I'm announcing today is a plan to ensure that our schools are in the world's top 5 by 2025, to make sure that our children are getting a world-leading education. The plan means better resourcing and better schools. It means a stronger, smarter and fairer Australia for the future. Today I will explain what we are doing, what we are asking the states and territories to do, and why it matters so much to our nation's future. But before doing so, I do want to acknowledge that we have only reached this day because of a lot of hard work done to date. That hard work that went into creating my school so every Australian could know what was happening in every school and the resourcing available to every school. The work put in to create a world-leading curriculum, the new Australian National Curriculum. The way we have worked with principals and teachers and school communities in many parts of the country to prove that if you join new resources with new ways of working, then you give kids a better education. The new buildings and new equipment we have brought to schools around Australia. The work of David Gonski and the eminent Australians who served on his panel to give us key insights about the best way forward on school funding. And all of the work that has happened since through the work of the Minister, Parliamentary Secretary Collins, the work of public servants here in Canberra, working with education stakeholders around the country. I thank people for that spirit of endeavour and that hard work. So, what are we doing? Well, first, we are creating a school resource standard. That is, the amount of money we know is what is needed to ensure that kids get a great education. The amount of money necessary to ensure kids do well at school. Over 6 years, we will start moving to that school resourcing standard. We will increase school funding so that in every school in our country, state schools, Catholic schools, independent schools, we have funding around the school resource standard for the education of children. The base amount of that funding in the school resource standard for primary school students is $9,271 per student, and for secondary students is $12,193. But that money is also joined by loadings, extra resources to cater for the fact that we know some kids need more effort if they are to succeed at school. So extra funding, new loadings as part of the school resource standard will be made available for those kids who come from poorer homes, for Indigenous children, for children who are educated in small schools or remote and regional schools, for children from non-English speaking backgrounds for whom English is a challenge, and of course for students with disabilities too. We know that this combined, the school resource standard and the loadings, are enough to enable kids to get a great education. And we also know, overwhelmingly, schools have less resourcing available to them today than that. The school resource standard means that the way we are treating funding is based on children's needs. It's children that are at the heart of the system, their needs and what is necessary for every child to reach their full potential. The school resource standard will be fully publicly funded in state schools. Non-government schools will get a proportion of the amount per student, which is adjusted according to the capacity of those school communities to make private contributions, as is currently the case. All loadings will be publicly funded in every school, so every student who needs extra support can get it. Now, the extra base funding necessary to get us to this school resourcing standard over 6 years is $14.5 billion. It's a lot of money, but I believe it is a wise investment in our children's future and in our nation's future. Getting there will not only require that base funding, it will also require the Australian government to index its contributions at 4.7%, which we are prepared to do. We will be calling on states and territories to index their contributions at least at 3%. So, to get there, today I make an offer to premiers and to chief ministers around the country, which is for the extra money required to get us to the school resourcing standard. For every $1 they are prepared to put in to get there, I am prepared to put in $2. The federal government prepared to put in a 65% share, basically a 2-for-1 offer. $2 from the national government to $1 from state and territory governments in their jurisdictions to get our kids to where they need to be with the resources at their disposal to have a great education. A 2-for-1 offer to ensure that around the country we are properly resourcing teachers, classrooms and children for generations to come. In addition, I will be saying to state premiers, there's the 2-for-1 offer, you must index at least 3%, and you must stop your cuts to education. No more taking money out of schools as we have seen around the country. I will also be saying to premiers and chief ministers when they meet here in Canberra on Friday that these new resources must be joined to our national plan for school improvement. What should people expect to see from that national plan? Well, they should expect to see changes in their child's classroom, like children having personalised learning plans. What does that mean? It means that the child who's at risk of falling behind gets the extra help he or she needs to catch up with the rest of the class, things like reading recovery. For the child who is doing so well that they're finding the work of the classroom boring, a personalised learning plan which keeps extending them and adding to their knowledge and their capacities for the future. It means making sure we get the best into teaching and then we support them during their teaching career so that they can always be at their best as a teaching professional, supporting them so they can be truly great teachers. It means working with our teachers to help them deal with some of the newer challenges or some old challenges that show in new ways today, including bullying in classrooms and disruptive behaviour from some students, which mean the rest of the kids don't get a chance to learn. It means schools having access to specialists, people like librarians, people like language teachers, and certainly embedded in our improvement agenda for Australian schools is students having access to a priority Asian language so our kids can have the ability to speak the languages of our region. It also means the best of equipment, the smart boards, the iPads, the learning tools of this century. And it means that every school must have a school improvement plan, and there must be complete transparency about how schools are striving to improve and how well they are doing in acquitting themselves against the school improvement plan, how much better they are getting. Now, if we fail to get this done, where does it leave our nation? Well, it means our nation is left with the old Howard model for funding of schools. It means our schools will be $5.4 billion worse off in contributions from the federal government, and that will be joined by cutbacks from state governments around the country. It means a future of underfunded schools. It means a future where school systems, state schools, Catholic schools, independent schools continue to have to fight amongst each other for the limited resources that are available on the table. This, in my view, is a recipe for educational disadvantage, for social division, and for, at the end of the day, a weaker economy than we could otherwise have as an Australian nation. It is therefore vital that we get this right for the future, that we are increasing funding for schools, not cutting it, that we as an Australian government sees our responsibilities to every child in every school, independent schools, Catholic schools and public schools. It's vital that we as a nation seize this moment to make a difference for every child in every school for the long term. This is a plan not just for school year 2014, but for generations to come. I turn now to Minister Garrett for some comments.
Thanks, Prime Minister. And there's no question that education's the great enabler. And today what we're saying is that the nation needs a plan to make sure that kids around the country get the support they need to do the best they can, and of course correspondingly for both those children and their families and the nation to benefit in the future. A national plan for school improvement means that we're putting education right at the front of our vision for Australia, an Australia that is well-trained, highly skilled, and where kids in schools now get high-paying jobs in the future. Not only here, but of course also in the increasingly important Asian region. If I look at schools, in all of the schools that I visit, I know that we can provide targeted additional resources and investment that'll make a big difference to the kids in those schools. And if we look at an average figure of $4,000 per student, that is the kind of money which might help that kid read or write better. It's the kind of money that might mean that when he or she goes into the library, there's a specially trained person there to help them as they research for their assignments or for their exams. If we apply these additional resources, we know on the back of the investment that we've made in our literacy and numeracy national partnerships, that we will see kids lifted off the low bands towards the national minimum standard and beyond. And that's so important for them. It's important for them and their well-being. It's important for us and a nation. The National Plan for School Improvement has been the subject of considerable work with state governments, state officials and the non-government school sector. And I want to put on record my appreciation, as well as the Prime Minister has, for all of the long-term hard effort that has gone into bringing us to this point. It's a very big day for school education in Australia, this announcement. And I think there are many, many mums and dads, many teachers, many principals and many people involved in schooling around Australia who will recognise that. Importantly, given that we have provided investment over time targeted at making sure we apply those resources to the things that make a difference, quality teaching, low socioeconomic communities and literacy and numeracy, we are now in a position working with the states to make sure that we have a national plan which applies those resources on the basis of need across school sectors and across states as well. What else will happen with the National Plan for School Improvement? Well, as the Prime Minister said, for each school to have a school improvement plan, for the principal to have additional power and autonomy to determine how their school is teaching effectively, for teachers coming into the school to be the best and the brightest in our classrooms, teaching our kids as well as they can and providing them that terrific teaching opportunity. To make sure that we're targeting on literacy and numeracy in the early years, on literacy especially, with the Reading Blitz. And of course, an engagement with Asia and access to Asian languages is absolutely essential. And as well as that, the provision of transparent information so that schools, parents and the community can understand how their schools are travelling and can interact and have good, strong and positive relationships with the school as a whole. I think we're laying the foundations for Australia's economic security today, but equally we're laying the foundation for each young Australian to be the best they can, to live the happiest and most fulfilling life they can, and that happens primarily if they get those opportunities in education, and that's what a national plan for school improvement is all about.
Jacinta Collins will say a few words about students with disabilities.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and thank you, Minister. I too would like to add my thanks to the many people that have been involved in bringing us to this place today. Students with disability are an important part of the National Plan for School Improvement, an important area where we need to provide better support for these students, and this plan will achieve that. The Gonski Review recommended that we needed to build a national data set so that we could better understand how to implement a loading for these students within the broader model. And states and territories in the Commonwealth are well on the path of developing that information. We anticipate a loading for students with disability will be in place in 2015. But what will occur in the meantime is that states and territories will need to maintain their existing support for students with disability, and the Commonwealth will extend the very popular More Support for Students with Disability program to ensure that the work that is occurring, not only in developing the data, but better supporting those students right now, continues until the loading is available.
Okay, I'm conscious there's a lot of information there, and so I do want to say to teachers and parents who want more information that it is available on our betterschools.gov.au website. There will also be information available on the associated Facebook page and on Twitter. People will want to know what this means for their child's education, and so there is reliable information there for people to absorb. We are talking about an increase of $14.5 billion of resources, on average $1.5 million for each school, on average $4,000 per student. It's a big day, it's a big announcement, and I know many parents will want to personally get the details of it.